MariNaomi, welcome to the Bookaholic podcast.
Thanks, Deirdre. Nice to see you.
Yes, glad to have you here. I'm always want to talk to people with different journeys and different voices, and you are my first cartoonist that I will profile on my show. I'm
Hey!
seeing cartoonists and graphic designers and book cover artists, and they're very hard to find. I can't find them, but and I need to go to the websites that you told me about, which we'll discuss a little bit later. But I just think I need to sit down and really focus on finding these folks. But I am so glad to have you here, and we're going to talk about a lot of things today, but we're not going to hold everybody long. Well, first of all, let's just talk about your book. And like we have discussed, it had a couple of delays, but it's called I Thought You Loved Me. And
Yes.
so tell us a little bit about the journey, first of all, why you wanted to write this book, and then what's in it, and even maybe some of your publishing delays. Because we have people that are also that listen to this channel are avid readers who are seeking to be writers. They're frustrated writers a lot of times. So
No writer's not. Every writer's a master.
yes, go ahead.
Well, a little backstory. I've been making comics since the 90s. I've been writing novels since the 80s when I was very young.
Wow.
Got them published because I found after I wrote a couple novels that writing and publishing are very different journeys, and one of them is fun and the other is not.
Yeah, right. I get that.
So when I stopped writing novels, I started writing in the video game industry, and at the same time, I discovered comics, and I wrote and drew my first comic in 1997.
Wow.
Since then, so my first graphic memoir, my first book came out in 2011. And
Okay.
so this memoir is my ninth book. So I've written YA, I've written and drawn young adult. In fact, one of those was banned in Texas fairly recently.
Yes.
I have a gag silly book called Dirty Produce, which is like fruits and vegetables, like having fun, sexy times. And that's super fun. And then the rest of the things that I've done, I'm primarily autobiographical. I do memoir. And this is the first book that I have done using collage. Even though I've been collaging this whole time, it's just a fun pastime. But because of the accessibility of having an iPad and working digitally, it became a
Mhm.
lot more easier on my hand and my body and just everything.
Mhm.
To
Mhm.
make collage. And this particular book is the first one that I've ever gone into that I didn't know how it was going to end when I started.
Wow.
And it's something I've told students, I've taught a little bit. I tell students never do this, but I just went ahead and broke all my own rules for this book.
Wow.
Um,
Wow.
I
Well,
drew the book. It was sort of a cathartic exercise, which is also another thing I tell people never to do. Uh,
mhm.
where I was trying to get over an old friendship that it ended in my 20s, and I just never got over it. And I'm turning 50 in August, so I'm like it's about time. And I started writing
Yeah.
it, I think 2016, and it took a few years to write.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so my journey on that.
Right. Right. And now this friendship, was this a friendship or was this a sexual relationship, friendship?
It was mostly a friendship. She was my first girl kiss,
Okay.
but it was mostly platonic. Nothing. We never dated.
Right.
So
Right.
we I back in the 80s and 90s, I hooked up with all my friends.
Right. Right. But you mostly bonded over identity.
Yeah, I don't know what we bonded over. It's like it's a strange. I mean, we have we have similar life journeys, even though we're very different people. We have similar political beliefs. We both care a lot about animals. Neither of us ever wanted children. So there's a lot of things that we have in common. And, we're both of the same generation, Generation X, which, I have a lot, most of my friends are millennials, but I do, there are certain things with Gen Xers that I can bond over that I can't bond over with millennials. So.
Yes, truly, truly, I understand that. Well, one of the things, just reading the description and hearing you say what the book is about, that was one of the hardest things that I had to come to a conclusion over of lost friendships. It took me a long time to realize that some friendships are only going to be for a season.
Yeah.
And it really, when I think when I lost one of my first friends, it was just really painful. And I was like, well, we were such good friends and we're not friends anymore, but because of something that wasn't so serious. It wasn't like it was so serious, but I can think of, I've probably maybe lost a whole lot, but really a couple of close friends. I think I've lost maybe about three. You
Yeah.
know, but I had to just realize that some people are in your life for just a season. Is
Sometimes
that
that too. I mean, you never know. I've definitely lost touch for long periods of time with people and then reconnected. It
yeah,
happens, or some people that you think are going to be in your life forever, you lose touch and then they die. That's happened to me.
yeah,
Terrible
yeah.
because you think you have all this time. Friendships are so, I mean, they feel so stable and like so integral to our personalities, but they can be very ephemeral. Is that the right word? Where ephemeral,
Yes,
where
yes, I think so. Or temporary
yeah, it's like any relationship. But
Yeah,
it hurts more when I lose someone really close to me as a friend than it does when I lose someone who's a romantic part. I'm going to change rooms because my dog is whining because she wants
oh, no. Okay, well, go ahead.
to continue talking though. Here's my
No, just, so, let's see here. Invoking the show. I'm gonna wait until you.
I'm good. Here, I'm going to turn off my washing machine.
Life happens.
Working from home. All right.
Working from home, you always got to do those dishes and the laundry. Okay, so now you're not, of course, as you described, this is your ninth book, I think you just said.
It is.
So you're not a novice to book writing and all the whole thing. So tell us a little bit about your writing journey and your cartoonist journey.
Um, well, I originally wanted to be a novelist. I wanted it ever since I was a tiny child, probably before I could even write. You
Wow.
know, it just I don't I blame Murder She Wrote, and I blame.
Oh, yes, because the typewriter, she would be typing. Angela Lansbury would have loved to hear that.
Oh my gosh, yeah, she's a hero still. Yeah, as I said, when I realized how hard publishing was, I pivoted. I decided I did not want that kind of, I couldn't
Yeah.
handle that kind of rejection. And I discovered comics when through anthologies. I think it was my boyfriend in 94, 95 who, or maybe even earlier, where I started finding out about underground comics. And I didn't really want to make them until I saw these punk rock woman anthologies. There was one called Twisted Sisters that changed my life. Diane
Mhm.
Newman was the editor. And
Mm,
the specific comic was called The Jelly by Mary Fleener. And it was a story about her hot mess of a roommate.
okay.
And I read it and I loved it. And I thought, I have stories like this. I love to draw. And it just never occurred to tell my own story because I didn't think anyone cared. Like
Right.
memoir for celebrities, not for regular people.
Right. Yes.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I started drawing comics. I sat down and drew a comic. It was like 6 or 7 pages, like within the span of a couple months. Like I was, as soon as I knew I wanted to do this, I was on fire. Like I just,
Oh, wow.
and that's actually, I'm in the middle. Just started a project 2 days ago where I feel that belly fire again, where I'm like, I have to write this now.
Oh, wow.
And
Wow. That's wonderful.
it feels amazing. It's the best part of the process, honestly.
Yes, yes, yes. And I can totally understand. I've talked to tons of people with this podcast, and the ones who are writers, that's what they love to do. And in your case, also cartoonists, that's what you love to do. But that publishing side and that marketing side, that's just hard to grasp. But if you want your book to be successful, you have to grasp those things and understand them and try to beat them down, try to beat them down to say the least.
Yeah, I do feel like where my Gen X stuff comes in, like the things that I learned from the 80s and 70s come in handy, where I'm really scrappy. Like I'm used to just not having help and figuring things out on my own.
Yeah.
Sorry if you could hear my dog crying in the
That's
background.
okay. It's life. I love dogs.
She's so, oh, she
She's
can hear my dog. Okay. Um,
okay. She's good. She misses you.
no, oh gosh. No. Do you mind if I get her for a second?
Go ahead and get her. You can bring her in and have her on your lap if you want to.
Yeah, that's what she really wants. Okay.
I can't wait to see her.
Oh my goodness, you're just a big puppy. Oh my goodness. All right.
Okay, where is she at?
Oh, there she's in my lap.
Oh my gosh. Oh wow. And she's gigantic too.
She thinks she's very small. Oh my gosh. Anyway.
My youngest son used to be like that. He would be like, he's a big guy, and he would always think he was so small, and he would be jumping and bouncing around. It's like, you're not small anymore. You can't do
She's the biggest dog. I have 4 dogs and they're all cat sized.
Oh, and she,
Thinks that she's the same size as them and the cats. It's ridiculous.
well, now she's happy.
And
So
now
we
she's
will now continue. Oh gosh.
talking about publishing. Yeah,
Yes.
when I started cartooning, I did not expect to get into publishing. Graphic novels didn't even exist yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Certainly,
Exactly.
my memoirs didn't exist yet. So all I wanted to do was to make these little stories and hand them out to my friends and just enjoy them, and maybe go to conventions and make friends there and hand them out to people or sell them. That was my goal. But over time, I thought, well, I would like to have a longer story. And so that it took me a while. And I call it my practice years, where had stories and anthologies and stuff, and self-published little zines. But it wasn't until 2009 or 2008 when I decided I had enough for a book. I had an idea. I think the idea came in 2003, so I was working on it for quite a while.
Right.
And that was the first book, and that was published by HarperCollins. And that was called Kiss and Tell, and it was this 300-page story about my sex life from ages 0 to 22.
From 0. That's very interesting.
Well, I start with my parents.
Okay. Well, now tell me a little bit about, as we already established, this is your 9th book, but you had a book that you wrote that recently was banned in the state of Texas. So let's talk about that book, the name of it, and what it's about.
So it's the first book in a trilogy. It's a young trilogy called Life on Earth, and the book is called Losing the Girl. I found out that it was banned through the LA Times. Someone saw my name in it. and said, "Oh, Mari, I think this is your book that got banned." It got banned in a place called Katy, Texas. Their school district banned it.
I've seen that name, Katy, Texas, before.
It was my book and one other, which was a prose book. I don't remember what it was, but it's a book that's been widely banned. And it was one woman complained about it. I can't remember her name, but I'm sure if you Google it, you can find out. And
Mhm.
wanted it to be gone because of the queer content. The funny thing is, there is no queer content in that book. The queer content starts in book 2 and continues in book 3, but I think she Googled my name, or she Googled queer comics, and she saw my name because I run the Queer Cartoonist database. That's,
Mhm.
yes. Or maybe she didn't care for the interracial relationship in the book, or maybe she didn't care for the abortion in the book.
Mhm. Mhm.
I
What
don't
was the cover like? What was the cover like in that book?
Oh, I don't have it. It was very benign. It was just three little figures, I think, or it was just like a bunch of silhouettes in the night sky.
Okay. Okay.
And I really love that series. The conceit of the series is it's like a teenage drama, but there's also potential space aliens. But it's really just about relationships and compassion and seeing things through different people's eyes. And each chapter is told from a different person's perspective, and it's drawn in a different style specific to their perspective. And
Right.
as their personality changes or doesn't, like you could see the shift in the styles change. So, for example, through one perspective, this boy has a crush on a girl, and so he sees her as beautiful. But when you see herself through her own eyes, she looks normal.
Yes.
And
Yes. Yes.
and throughout the books, you can see how different people see each other, which was a really fun challenge as an artist. And but really, it was about trying to step into different people's shoes, which is I feel like that's what literature is all about, is to
Mhm.
learn other perspectives. And the reason I wrote that book was because the friendship that I tackled and I Thought You Loved Me, my latest book, I had just learned some upsetting news about why my friend had actually ghosted, and I was trying to wrap my head around it, but I wasn't
Mhm.
ready to write about her. So I
Mhm.
fictionalized her and tried to get into her shoes and played out a
Okay.
situation. Uh,
Yes.
so that's how the book came about.
Yes, yes. Well, that lady, the woman that you're speaking of, I don't know, she may be the very same woman who complained about Amanda Gorman's poem that she read at Biden's inauguration, and that got banned also in Texas. So, and it would just took one woman to do the banning. Apparently in Texas, it just takes one person to say complain, and then they just take the books off the shelf. So let's dive deeper, because we know this is a huge problem and a huge issue in our society today. This book banning, it always has been, and I have had a guest on my show who is an expert on book banning, and she gives specific years in which a lot of times people ban books, because those are the years of awareness of children, and they don't want these children to see other things that can happen or that can be. They don't want them exposed to them, because they want them to follow this ABCDEFG life, and if it's anything that's a subset of that life, it's like, oh no, you can't do that. You can't be that. So,
I mean, just because like the presence of queer people in books doesn't mean that queer people don't exist or that they don't necessarily exist around them. It's like they're not trying to ban books, they're trying to stop their kids from being queer, but guess what, that's not how it works.
well, I will say this. For whatever reason, here lately, I've been tuned into ABC, the network. And last week, they did the 1619 Project, which all that is Nicole Hannah Jones is saying that please be aware that Africans were brought to America as early as 1619 on this particular ship, and I've forgotten the ship's name, but when this particular ship, just like we've always had to hear about the pilgrims coming over on the Mayflower, and she was pointing out her story, how patriotic her father was, and different aspects of her family and other African Americans and the challenges they have faced due to racism. That's all it is. It is not saying white people, this is the whole alternative history and forget about all the things you've learned. And so last night or the night before, ABC once again had a show on about transgender kids. It was an excellent, excellent show. It was children who came out to their families, and it was understandable. It was understandable why. They totally were not the person, they had been born physically as. And you could see that. You could easily see that. And all they wanted to be was who they felt that they should be. It was not false. It was not any child was playing around. And people try to paint that picture. Oh, this is a whole new thing. And all this literature and all this other stuff is trying to make people be this way. That is not it. That is not the truth. And I thought that was one of the best shows. It was only an hour that it took. If you watched that show, and if you had any questions or doubts or anything like that, it really clarified a lot of things. It should have for a lot of people. It was very eye-opening. And you loved it because in the end, the kids were happy. Who wants to see miserable children? And that they were happy, and they were happy with who they are. It just was a very, very good story. But you're right. They want people, they just try to think like this is brand new stuff, and it's not. It totally is not. Your thoughts?
Like if literature determined your sexuality, then everyone would be heterosexual. Because I mean, the people who seek out queer literature are the people who are already feeling that, and people might stumble upon it, and all that's
Mm-hmm.
going to do is give them compassion, you
Mm-hmm.
know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I think part of it is, and this is like the deep dark secret, is that they don't like the people who are very anti-compassion don't want their kids to have compassion either. They want their bigots like they are. They don't want them to accept people for who they are. And
They absolutely do not. They absolutely do not. And for that reason, I'm big in travel. Our family loves to travel. We're not going to Florida at all, whatsoever. I don't even really go to Texas ever. But I'm not going to Florida at all until that governor and some of their policies change. I'm not going there. It's just ridiculous. And you know, nothing is going to stop anything. They tried to silence and stop people from marrying interracially. That
hey,
that is ridiculous. That's ridiculous.
I
You
born
know,
after interracial marriage was legalized. I mean, I wouldn't exist. So
right,
it's
exactly.
ridiculous. But like these things like interracial love and like homosexuality and gender bending stuff, this has existed as long as humans have existed. Like it's ridiculous. Like
Most
people
definitely.
feeling threatened that somehow they're going to be pushed aside because other people are allowed to live their lives or pee in the bathrooms where they feel comfortable. I mean, come on.
Well, I will tell you, North Carolina, if you remember a couple of years back, not a couple, several years back, we were the epicenter of the whole bathroom issue.
Mm.
And, it was just sickening. And I was like, okay, wow, North Carolina, really? We're going to be on the map due to this silly bathroom issue? Because, all you had to do was think some places that you go, a boutique or a restaurant, a small restaurant, they only have one bathroom. And you go in there, you use the bathroom, and you come out. You might go in, a man might come in, or whatever. I mean, but it's just one place. So it's just like, what are y'all talking about? What are you saying?
I like when I see things like this, like the book bannings, I read somewhere recently, and I don't have notes, but that a very small contingent, the number of people are actually the ones doing the banning, and they're very focused, and they're very, they're very serious about it. And it's not a
Right.
lot of people who are getting a lot of books banned. It's like a small number of people. But when I see these moral panics, which is what this is, happen,
Yes, great words.
what are you trying to hide? Like, what are you trying to not? What are you trying to distract us from? Like, there's something
Right.
else on, and a lot of times it's not super like high-end conspiracy stuff. A lot of times it's like this person might feel uncomfortable with their sexuality, and they fear that if they read a queer book that they're going to turn queer. I feel like
Right.
I know a lot of people who
Excuse me.
who eventually out of the closet, who were very outspoken homophobic people as youth. They were bullies to homosexuals as youth because they were so afraid of their sexuality getting out. And I think sometimes it's just as simple as that. Other times, with those very small select people who are lobbying against, all these books, I think there's something else going on. I don't know what it is. I'm not really a conspiracy theorist, although I do believe that some people do conspire to do things.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do.
And I don't trust it. I don't trust them. They can't win.
They cannot win. They cannot win. And I put this on my Facebook recently when we began the month of June, and I was giving a shout out for Pride Month. And a lot of times people weaponize the Bible to use against other people. But that's not what the Bible says. God says to love. He does not say to weaponize people, and that's how it gets misconstrued about who God is, because there's so many men, mankind, that weaponize the Bible for their own purposes. And that's a lot of times where all of that comes from. So I'm like, don't believe that. Don't let those people lead you down the wrong path. The only path is the love path.
The Bible is an interesting piece of literature in that it is weaponized in the same way that statistics are weaponized, where you can you can take it and you can read it however you want, and interpret it however you want. My dad has been very upset about the book banning. For years, he's been saying, if they want to ban a book, they should ban the Bible. There's incest in the Bible. There's sex in
it is. It is. It is. I mean, I see his point, but there's everything already in there,
Yeah.
So, I tell you, it's just unnerving and maddening. But the last point I would say to this is, like you just said, they cannot win. They absolutely cannot, and they will not. Well, let's shift over to other things that you're doing, and that you handle the database of queer artists. Tell us a little bit about that.
So I believe I started it 2014. I was researching an article, and I was collecting for my own purposes the names of and information of cartoonists of color, because I was people in the comics industry who were not white. And throughout my career, like even when I was doing it as a hobby, people always told me that, excuse you, dog, that comics were for white men and that they dominated, and there was a reason. And that was also the case in video games where people were like, this is a boys thing, so you have to conform to boys stuff. And so I'd been hearing that for so long, and I decided to do a little investigation. And I knew other comic cartoonist people of color, but I couldn't find anything about this subject online. And the more research I did, mostly through crowdsourcing, like on Twitter, on Facebook, I found that there were dozens of us, and then hundreds of us. And then once I had the spreadsheet, there were like 100 people, because I had to put on a spreadsheet because I was repeating names on my little notepad.
Right.
Oh man, someone should put this on the internet. Like, look how many of them are. And then I realized I was the one holding the notepad or the spreadsheet. I'm like, I guess I got to do this.
That would be you. That would be you. Very nice.
So I started this database, which was at first just like a list of names. After a couple, and then shortly after, I figured out the mechanics of it with the help of my spouse, who helped not automate it, but it made it easier to put up there.
Right.
Well, I have this technology. I should, maybe I should do queer comics. And then since then I've hired a developer, like a web developer, who made it searchable and made it into the database it is today.
Wonderful.
And about 2022, so oh my gosh, like 5 years ago, I started the Disabled Cartoonist database.
Yes.
That's not an identity of mine yet, but like I felt like it was really necessary.
Most definitely.
So those are the databases. There's thousands of people in there to this day. And I keep thinking, wow, it'd be nice not to have to do this anymore. I'll stop it when it's not necessary anymore, but it keeps being necessary, unfortunately.
It is very necessary, and I'm sorry. I don't see that ending in our lifetime, maybe someone else's lifetime, but I don't see it ending. You'll have to pass it down. You're going to have to pass it down.
Pass the bills on. Yeah, completely for free. I mean, it's not for free for me, but I don't put ads up there. I don't make any money whatsoever on there. Like every so often someone will give me a donation for that, for what I do. But like, obviously, like I pay for it, but like really my payment is just feeling like I'm doing a good thing.
You are.
A lot of booksellers and librarians and panel organizers and editors, like people find people there to give them their first jobs or to find people to have on their podcasts. It's just a resource that I think is necessary for now.
Wow. I definitely think that it is definitely needed and a resource. And so I'll say thank you for that. Well, Marnie, oh, excuse me, I'm saying the wrong thing. MariNaomi, excuse me, MariNaomi, thank you so much for joining us today. Give us a shout out to all your websites. It's just a few.
Yeah, MariNaomi.com is where you can find all of them, but cartoonistofcolor.com, spelled the Northern American way, queercartoonist.com and disabledcartoonist.com are where you find this. And I also have a Patreon for if people want to support my work. It's mostly diary comics.
Oh, wow. Well, thank you for that. And for those of you who have short memories like myself, from time to time, we'll have all of their information in the podcast show notes, as well as in the video description box on YouTube. MariNaomi, thank you so much for joining me today.